muy malo. Roto el pato de vestuario. La interpretación siempre negativa. Siempre negativa. Nunca positiva.
Welcome to Siempre Positivo as Barcelona go top of La Liga after beating Real Sociedad 2-1 a day after Real Madrid lost their first game of the season, beaten 5-2 in the derby by Atlético Madrid. I'm Sam Marsden, joined by Rick Sharma. Tony lost in Milan somewhere. Rick, how you doing?
Yeah, good. I'm alright. Enjoyed the game. Being back at the Olympic Stadium where we kind of hoped we wouldn't be back, although I don't mind it, to be fair, as I've said before.
Yeah, we were back in the Olympic Stadium. It was like you've never been away, really.
Yeah, just disappointing, I suppose. When at the end of last season, we walked on the pitch and we were like, "Yeah, goodbye to the Olympic Stadium." It was nice that it was here for a couple of years. In some ways, maybe rather than others, in terms of the atmosphere, it wasn't the best. But yeah, I mean, El Barça is El Barça. So people say about Madrid, El Madrid is El Madrid, but El Barça is El Barça.
I think deep down we probably knew at some point we'd be back earlier this season, but yeah, a strange day to be back as well, because obviously we've got La Merced festivals in Barcelona at the moment, and in theory I liked the idea of it being La Merced. On the Sunday at the end of La Merced they have a big firework display sort of by the MNAC, the Museum for National Art of Catalonia, and Plaza Catalunya and stuff. But in practice, what it actually meant was it was a nightmare getting to the stadium. And I know people don't care about this, but I need to get it off my chest. A nightmare getting to the stadium and a nightmare getting out of the stadium, because the stadium coincided with the fireworks. The finishing of the game, or when we got out from the press conference, coincided with that. And all of Montjuic was sort of shut off, had to walk all the way around. And then by the time I got down to the bottom, it was the end of the fireworks and there was the rush for everyone to get on the metro. So it was an absolute nightmare. So apologies for that rant, but I needed to get it off my chest.
And to give some balance to the conversation, I didn't mind it too much, to be honest. For me, it turned a 20-minute walk up the hill into a 30, maybe 32-minute walk or something. So not too much longer walking around by Pobla Español and all that. And it was fine. And on the way down, I was down before Sam. I was down early enough to get down there and watch the fireworks from a very good position, because I couldn't go home via my normal route, so I just stayed around and watched the fireworks.
Yeah, it was a pain for me. It was annoying because I wanted to get home and watch I'd rather have watched the Ryder Cup than the fireworks, but I was forced to watch
the golf fireworks.
I was forced to watch the fireworks. What a modern, what's the word? Complaint. First world problem.
First world problem.
Yeah. But anyway, there weren't too many fireworks on the pitch, if we seg into it that way. Barcelona coming from behind again, as they did against Real Oviedo on Thursday, to beat Real Sociedad 2-1. An interesting lineup from Barca. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you are aware by now, but there have been a few injury issues at Barcelona over the last week. Gavi obviously out for up to 5 months with a meniscus problem. They're without Fermin Lopez, who's out for 3 weeks, probably about 2 weeks now, certainly after the international break. Marc-Andre ter Stegen, obviously a long-time absentee, but he's been joined by Joan Garcia, who will be out for around a month, perhaps a little bit longer, after also undergoing a small sort of operation to clean the meniscus in his knee. Rafinha out until after the international break as well. So with that in mind, we expected sort of a weakened Barcelona team, or certainly some changes from what we've seen so far this season, with Chesney coming in. But we didn't expect Rooney Bardghji to start, perhaps, or Dro Fernandez, 17-year-old, handed a full debut by Hansi Flick. Brave decisions from Hansi against the Real Sociedad side that haven't been playing that well this season, but are a threat and can cause problems when they're playing well. And they did take the lead, perhaps against the run of play through Alvaro Odriozola in the first half. Barca were level by half-time. Jules Koundé heading in Marcus Rashford's corner. And then the second half, the return of Lamine Yamal. He'd, of course, missed Barca's last 4 games with that groin problem he aggravated while on international duty with Spain. He came on in the 58th minute. Everyone was obviously absolutely buzzing, because that's why a large percentage of the supporters tend to go to Montjuic these days, is to see Lamine Yamal. And within a minute, the 59th minute, he beat his defender, stood up the ball, and Robert Lewandowski headed in his 4th goal of the season, his first as a starter, and what proved the winning goal in a 2-1 win for Barca. There's still plenty of action after the goal. It's obviously still half an hour to play. Lamine had a goal of his own, ruled out for a marginal offside. Apparently it was his knee which was slightly off, but certainly a tight call, and one which was made very, very quickly given how tight it looked initially. A few late scares for Barca as well, actually. Take Kubo hitting the bar for Real Sociedad, and if they had drawn, it would have only been their own fault, really, because they had enough chances to kill the game off. Certainly Lewandowski with one big miss, hitting the bar when he perhaps could have just stroked it in, given the quality of his finishing so far this season. But Barca saw the game out easily enough, I would say, in the end, to win 2-1 and to go top of La Liga after 7 games, 6 wins and a draw, ahead of Real Madrid, who had won all 6 games before losing to Atletico this weekend. Rick, I think perhaps people will look at it and say, well, Barca had to come from behind. It was, not the, an all sort of all shining, all glimmering performance. But I think in the circumstances, when you look at the team that Flick managed to put out ahead of PSG, the pluses of Lamine coming on and looking sharp after a couple of weeks out, it's a bit like what Tony said, I think, last week, in terms of you just kind of feel like whatever team Barca put out at the moment, I guess especially when you've got Pedri and Lamine out there, etc., it feels like they're gonna win the game, which hasn't always been the case for Barca sides. If you think back to Barca sides over the last decade, and they've made changes or players have come in, they've often sort of struggled, and then it takes reverting to type or getting players back to get back on form. At the moment, it does feel a little bit like whoever's out there, Barca are playing really well or playing well enough to win games.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm a bit more negativo than you on the performance. I don't think it was that easy for them to see the game out, and I think they could easily have dropped points in this game. I do agree with you on what you just said then, that it does feel like that even if you're starting with Rooney, Bardghji and Dro Fernandez, you can still win the game. That's especially when you got Lamine back, when he comes on and makes such a big impact in the second half. So that is the big positive, is that this team, last season, Flick made these rotations, I think it was against Osasuna, if I'm not wrong, where he made a bunch of these rotations and they lost. And it started their big slump going into Christmas in that period. And this time of the year, same time of the year, he's done it and they've won. And things are looking still decent for Barca. And I mean, I think that Flick was maybe letting his team off the hook a little bit because of the PSG game coming up, and because obviously playing in midweek, and him being like, oh, I'm so proud of them, I'm so proud of this team today. I feel more like Jules Koundé said at the end of the game, I didn't like the last 25 minutes. We suffered too much. I didn't like how it ended. I agree more with Jules than with Hansi Flick on this one, and with you. Yeah,
Koundé did say that. I think the difference between, and I say this having praised, the way Flick's made changes, brought players in, all throughout these first sort of 7-8 games, if we include the Champions League this season. The difference with that Osasuna one is obviously the changes in that Osasuna game were defensively mainly. We had Sergi Dominguez coming in. We had Gerard Martin, who obviously has gone from, I don't want to say strength to strength, I don't want to make it sound like I'm bigging him up too much, but he's actually developed into a really sort of solid option in terms of replacing Balde at the moment. Certainly in games of this calibre, we'll see how he fares in perhaps bigger games if he is required. But if you think of like Gerard Martin now and Gerard Martin at this point coming in against Osasuna last season, there's obviously a world apart in the two players and expectations, confidence, how he feels. But yeah, those changes were at the back against Osasuna, weren't they? And it's not easier, but you can carry a player. Not that Dro was carried, just theoretically, you can sort of carry someone in that 10 position a bit more than, a mistake from Sergi Dominguez or a younger Gerard Martin, or an inexperienced Gerard Martin, who's obviously paid more. Whereas this season, Flick's been able to. Yesterday, for example, he paired Araujo and Christensen together again. You've obviously got Kubasi and Eric Garcia on the bench, and the options that he's rotating at the back have been much better. What did you make of Dro? I guess we'll start with Dro, 17-year-old, come through the club's academy from Galicia. I think his mum's from the Philippines. Really, really rated by Hansi Flick. Perhaps we'd have seen him before this season if he hadn't had a slight sort of problem. He was on the bench the first couple of games, then he had a very small thigh problem, missed a few games, was back on the bench against Real Oviedo, and then it was a big surprise to see him starting against Real Sociedad on Sunday. I think it was two things. I think it was a reward from Flick because he really likes him. Obviously, he was good in pre-season, scored a goal, looks good in that position. I think it was that. And then it was obviously the combination of no Gavi, no Firmine. He wanted to take Dani Olmo out ahead of the game against Paris Saint-Germain. Olmo obviously did come on at half-time. And Flick, surprisingly, because he doesn't often confirm what the team lineup's going to be ahead of the game, did confirm that Olmo will start against PSG. So it was, I guess, that combination of things. But Dro, thoughts? Neat and tidy on the ball, perhaps not as involved as he could have been, but grew into the game a little bit before going off at half-time.
Yeah, his best minutes were sort of the last 10, 15 minutes before the break. To be honest, as I said to you actually during the game, I thought both him and Rooney Bartaggi in the first half an hour were a little bit flojo in Spanish, like a little bit weak and not kind of maybe a little bit intimidated by the defenders or being muscled by the defenders, and maybe a little bit worried they didn't want to take too many risks. And I think something changed after they got a bit more comfortable. And I think actually after Real Sociedad scored, I think they realised, well, we have to take risks. Like we need to win this game, and they both improved after that. And I mean, yeah, Dro, nice footwork, kind of seems bright. Didn't really get to shine in this one at all, but you can see how you can already understand how he could end up being very, very good and very useful for Barca. You can kind of see that even if there's not many actions you can point to in this game where he did something that was like, oh, that was really good. It's just, yeah, I mean, he looks the part, is that kind of typical sort of number 10 physique. And yeah, I'm interested to see more of him. Just for today, like, he did okay. I'm not going to criticise him, not going to praise him really anything in either of those ways. But yeah, just for a 17-year-old making his debut as a Barca 10, not too bad.
Yeah, I always think we have to put this in context, and I think we do it every time a young player does play for Barca, but Barcelona have been absolutely spoiled with the ability that these teenagers have played with when they've dropped into the team. And I know we're increasingly seeing it around Europe, young players coming in a little bit earlier, doing well from a young age. But what Pedri did at a young age, what Gavi did when he first came into the team, what Lamine Yamal is doing, what Pau Cubarsí did when he came in as a 16-year-old centre-half is absolutely ridiculous. And it kind of sort of takes a little bit the glean off, if we go back 5 years before those guys, it would have been not unthinkable, but amazing that this 17-year-old coming in and getting his debut in a LaLiga game. How long it had been since that sort of stuff had happened before this generation.
It kind of was unthinkable. Lamine Yamal making his debut at 15 years old. Like, what the hell is that? Almost more impressive is Pau Cubarsí as a centre-back at 16. That to me was absolutely insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, so it does kind of have to be contextualised. Like, Dro, 17. He's obviously getting minutes because Firmino and Gavi aren't there, but he has been around since pre-season. Flick is a big fan, so I'm sure we're going to see him fed minutes, certainly over the next sort of month. Perhaps not against Paris Saint-Germain, perhaps off the bench. Who knows? Who knows how the game will go? But certainly another exciting player for Barca. Rooney Bartaggi as well, only a little bit older. I think he's 20 in November. What did you make of him? Grew into the game a little bit as well. There was a combination between him and Dro as well. At the end, Dro played him down the right. He started taking on his man a little bit more and whatnot. It looked okay. He stayed on for about 58 minutes when Lamine came on. Yeah,
I mean, again, when I said to you it was probably about 25 minutes maybe or something into the game, maybe half an hour, that I thought both of them were like a little bit lightweight compared to what we're seeing. Obviously with Rooney Bartaggi, the direct comparison is to technically the second best player in the world, possibly the best player in the world, Lamine Yamal. So obviously there's a massive drop off compared to Lamine. But in the last parts of the first half, he beat his man, and the first time he's really done that. Against Valencia, I thought he wasn't very good. And then against Getafe, he was a bit brighter when he came on. And then this was probably his best moments in a Barca shirt so far. Like suckering the man in and then blasting past him. It was really nice from Bartaggi. But then, of course, Lamine Yamal comes on and within a minute shows why he's so good and why it's kind of impossible to be the guy that fills in for him.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Not impossible to be the guy that fills in, because Barca have had 4 games, 4 wins without Lamine. It was 1-1 against Real Sociedad when he came on, but like you say, within a minute we had that comparison of Lamine, not versus. I don't want to make it about Lamine versus Rooney. I just want to make it about Lamine versus no Lamine.
Yeah. No, okay. With no Lamine, Barca have showed that this season they can win without Lamine, but not because the guy who replaces him is the guy that's doing stuff.
Lamine just wakes people up in the stadium. You mentioned being back at Montjuic, and I mean, the attendance, the crowd was really good, 50,000. And Flick says, the great atmosphere, etc. I don't think it is quite good. And this touches a little bit on the question we had on the Q&A pod on Patreon last week from Little Blue Truck about, the grado de animación, etc. But there hasn't been the same atmosphere since they left after that. Was it after the Bayern game last season? And they're still sort of singing for them. And there's a video that's gone viral today of people going round with little boards. I don't know if you've seen it at Montjuic yesterday at the Olympic Stadium, like saying like wave your scarf now and stuff like that, lift your scarf in the air and little things like that, which the Grada de Animación have jumped on and are like, this is like the evolution, and it's like pictures of like them. And then obviously the first game they weren't there. I think they put a band in there, didn't they? And then they just sold the tickets in that section. And now they're sort of trying to generate the atmosphere that way. But what happens when Lamine comes on is there is instantly an atmosphere. Like people sort of like wake up from their slumber. It's like they've just been sort of dozing through the match. And I'm not saying, not all fans, but, you know, a lot of them are sort of, perhaps even myself included at sometimes, and all of a sudden they're alert. They want to see what happens every time he gets the ball, and that kind of energy, I don't know if that feeds into Lamine, to the team, but obviously within a minute he gets the goal. The Real Sociedad coach said, you know, he's probably showing why he's probably the best player in the world, etc., that he was the deciding factor in the game, coming off the bench, that, you know, you can't really stop him. Even bringing on fresh players, fresh legs to sort of maybe defend him doesn't work. And yeah, that was the case. It was.
And on the crowd, I mean, as you mentioned in the game, you could actually hear the La Marseillaise concerts during the game. You could hear from outside the stadium music being played.
So yeah, Lamine back, and he'll probably be fired up for the game against. I know it's just a group game against Paris Saint-Germain. I know there are a lot of injuries, etc. But you'd imagine he'll want to get out there and deliver big time on Wednesday, won't you?
Definitely. I mean, like, there's so many reasons beyond the fact that you just want to win a Champions League game. You're playing against the Champions League winners. You're playing against a team that you hoped to play last season, but you weren't able to. You're playing against Ousmane Dembele. Well, he's injured, isn't he? But you're playing against his team, and Lamine obviously just came second in the Ballon d'Or to him. So I think that'll be a point of motivation for him, as Hansi Flick suggested recently. And yeah, I think Lamine will be a top A.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll go through the players on the ratings, but I guess some of the other talking points from the game were Marcus Rashford and how he's grown into his role, and also there was a lot of talk after the game from Flick about how that partnership between Pedri and Frenkie de Jong is developing. I mean, I guess we do speak about Lamine every week. I don't know if we can speak about Pedri every week, or that partnership with de Jong. I guess he was quite interested in Flick in that he kind of suggested that, I don't want to say that it's not only now, but that their relationship has kind of clicked, like in the last sort of few weeks this season. I guess, you know, de Jong was injured until October last season. He was in and out of the team from there. They did become the established sort of double pivot, if that's what you want to call it, towards the end of the season. But he spoke about how not only are they sort of knowing what each other is doing and where to be, but he noticed yesterday, he said, not for the first time, but he said sort of only in recent weeks he's noticed how these guys are sort of, Pedri and de Jong, are not just knowing where each other are, but sort of orchestrating where everyone else should be, and sort of leading in that way. He highlighted sort of Pedri's leadership.
Well, yeah, but I think he actually did that last season too, Pedri, and I think Flick even said it towards the end of last season that Pedri was coming along as a leader. But yeah, he reiterated it yesterday, and I think, but
in terms of the two of them,
yeah, in terms of the two of them, that's definitely improved this season. Like you said, last season that Frenkie wasn't set. It was Casado for a while, and then obviously Frenkie earned his place alongside Pedri, but it still wasn't. I mean, it was obviously very good, but maybe it wasn't as good as it is now. And I think that, I mean, what we've been saying in the last few weeks, I think Frankie's played a lot better in the last few weeks, and maybe that's as a result of this, that he's clicked perfectly now with Pedri in the base of the midfield, and if something feels really good about that duo at the moment. And yeah, good again yesterday. There's a moment people were sharing on the Discord, this dribble from Pedri, where he kind of lifts the ball up over a slide tackle and then somehow manages to move it in the air in a way that it looks like the physics of the ball shouldn't allow the ball to be moved in this way. It's just a magical dribble, quite Messi-esque. And I mean, for me, Pedri is almost as good as watching Lamine in every game. Like, yeah, Lamine's been away, but I've really watching Pedri in the last few weeks has been sensational. Worth going to the games for.
Yeah, I watched that video and I couldn't work out what was happening to the ball.
It's like, maybe, what was that thing? Bernard's watch, that thing where you could stop time and then he could move stuff and then start time again. It's like Pedri managed to stop time, move the ball in the air, and then start time running in a slightly different angle.
Yeah, absolutely insane. I think we've touched on this before as well, but it's kind of interesting to see how that develops, and especially how it does against PSG on Wednesday in the latter stages of the Champions League. I mean, I guess we had glimpses of it last season, but Barca were still giving away far too many chances. Just in the scheme of, for years, we have spoken about, not just us, everyone around Barca, how they need not a destroyer, but, a pivot, someone to come in and protect the defence more. And Flick's kind of not prioritised that at all and put all his faith in this partnership. Yeah.
Tony's not here, but I'm going to be a little Tony-like, and I'll say that this game was more of a worry than the last games because of the sort of lack of defensive solidity. The Barca have been pretty good defensively this season, but yesterday, apart from maybe in the Levante game, but yesterday they weren't very good defensively. And now with PSG coming, obviously that's a new test for the defence to see how they can cope with PSG. And if Tony was here, he would also praise Tech for his performance yesterday. He didn't have to make any saves really, but he was pretty solid. Like, he was decent at catching stuff. Positioning was good and decent. Yeah,
Chesney in goal, and his backup's going to be Diego Cochin, the US goalkeeper who flew to Chile last week with the US under-20 side. Was warming up for training and warming up for, I think they start against New Caledonia. They may already have played that game either today or tomorrow or yesterday, and was given the news that he had to fly back from Chile to Barcelona and was on the bench as the number 2 against Real Sociedad. So any sort of crazy moments from Chesney, any red cards, any injuries, and we could be seeing Diego Cochin in goal because obviously Ter Stegen's out, Joan Garcia's out.
I am worried about that, to be honest. I'm worried that he's going to give a penalty away. He loves giving away penalties, so that to me seems like in his wheelhouse tomorrow.
Yeah, let's see how he gets on against PSG. Big game for him, but the benefit.
Not tomorrow. Wednesday.
Yeah, we knew what you meant, Rick. Just before we move on to the ratings, just a reminder that you can join us over on Patreon. There are some free episodes over there from last week. There's a Q&A on there from last week as well, and the collections looking back at Barca's season and building the dream Barca modern 11 from 1990. There are options to become a member for free, and the Monday podcast goes on there first as well. Rick.
Well, I also think we should talk about seasons. I've been enjoying our seasons, and soon, I can't remember where we're up to, but we're getting pretty close to the era where you and me moved to Barcelona. So I think those episodes are going to be especially good because we were actually here, we lived through it, and we can remember it. So I'm looking forward to getting back into those as well.
Yeah, well, we started in 2000, 2001, and we're up to, I don't know if we completed the Pep years or just up to I think we're up to the final Pep season, but we took a little break just because we were catching up so quickly with the modern time. But yeah, that will be resumed at some point in the coming weeks. Okay, then let's hear the ratings from Barcelona 2, Real Sociedad 1.
It's like I'm back in my teenage years listening to Radio 5 Live and all the scores come in at 5 o'clock. Wojciech Chesney, 6.5, solid, but like I said, not a huge amount to do. Jules Koundé, 5.5. He obviously scored the goal, but apart from that, I thought he was pretty bad in this game. I mean, I was saying it even before he made the mistake sort of late on that led to Real Sociedad hitting the bar when he was just sort of sleeping on the ball in midfield and kind of went into like a slow motion, and then they robbed him and ran in on goal. I think I've seen him do that one time before. It's like his brain just stopped working for a bit, like he's crashed. But yeah, odds. Ronald Araujo, 6 out of 10. Christensen, 7. Thought it was quite good. Gerard Martin, 6.5, solid. Frankie, 7.5. Pedri, 8.5. Rooney Bartaji, 6.5. Dro, 6. Rashford, 7.5. Robert Lewandowski, the other goal scorer, 6.5. I mean, his header for the goal was a powerful header, but it wasn't particularly accurate. It hit the post, and the way it hit the post, I'm actually surprised it went in. It looked like it was just hitting the post and coming out, but it managed to maybe had just enough on it to take it inside the net rather than out. And then obviously he hits the bar when he probably should score late on. Lamine off the bench, 8 out of 10. Beyond his assist, he just was, every time he got the ball, was scaring Real Sociedad. What did Sergio say after the game, Real Sociedad coach? His mere presence on the pitch is a threat. And that's, I think that nails it. And Ferran Torres, 7 out of 10. I thought actually he was pretty good when he came on, Ferran. We've talked a lot about Ferran on the past, but I think when he comes on as a sub, there's something about him that is really worrying for defenders, and he looks super focused when he comes on as a sub, maybe sometimes more than when he starts. Yeah,
I think he's playing with confidence high at the moment. There is an element of confidence to the Shark. What was Marcus Rashford? 7.5?
7.5, yeah. He was good. Nice assist from the corner again. 2 corner assists in a row for Rashford. And also he had a couple of shots. One in the 10th minute, that was a brilliant save from Romero, and another one in the second half. Just looking dangerous and looking bright on the left. I
think he's doing okay. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I kind of feel like I see opinions on Marcus are either one way or the other. Because even like you say yesterday and against Real Oviedo, he's getting in positions, he's creating chances, his directness is when he gets running with the ball, I've not seen many faster players in La Liga. He can breeze past fullbacks. The problem then is when you're going so fast, being able to do something efficient with the ball. It was usually a cutback or a thing. But like you say, yesterday, just before he came off as well, he beat a couple of men, had a shot just wide. He's creating chances. There was a good pass in the first half for Lewandowski as well, sort of through the lines. I think he's doing good things, and I think he is keeping it simple at times. And I see some people either saying that he is doing amazingly, and other people seem to be on this idea that he doesn't quite fit the system. I think he does play things simple at times when needs to. I don't think it's directness every time and predictable. The only thing I do notice, and I don't know, this is perhaps something more to ask Flick, whether it's something they work on and he'd like to see more, is he doesn't seem to be on a wavelength with the players when he makes the runs in behind. And a lot of the times it's defenders with the ball. And like you say, maybe it will make a difference now Lamine is back, because if you think how often Lamine sort of played those balls in behind for Rafinha last season, but Rashford goes, and I don't think one time he's had sort of a ball over the top to sort of chase onto. Certainly not yesterday. I don't know about Oviedo for sure. I guess against Getafe there was the one when he was wide and Gasali did play him in, but it wasn't the same situation for me as the ones when he makes the runs sort of through the middle and he wants the ball. And they were turned down a few times yesterday, I think, by the centre-backs, by the midfielders, and you could see a little bit of frustration from Marcus. I don't know if that's something that he's sort of making those runs and they've not worked on, or if it's something that players are choosing not to play them. That's the only observation I made yesterday.
I think sometimes there's too many players in the team that can't play those balls. Like, I'm not expecting Rooney or Dro or Lewandowski or Gerard Martin or Araujo to play any of those balls for Rashford. The other players, I mean, not that it's impossible for those players to do it, but it's just they don't back themselves to do it. They think, 90% chance of giving the ball away here. So they think, turn, pass, find a gap, work it. Whereas I think someone like Lamine is absolutely going to back himself to give Rashford those passes and get them right about 80% of the time. So let's see. I think that's going to be a particularly interesting combo. He does it for Rafinha all the time, so I don't see why he won't do it for Rashford. Yeah,
one to watch against Paris Saint-Germain, potentially. Just to finish then, let's rewind just over 24 hours from Barcelona's win against Real Sociedad and touch on the Madrid derby, because I think everyone had thought, not that this is an amazingly sort of special Real Madrid team, but they seemed fairly sort of, what's the word, not robotic, but sort of solid until now in terms of winning games. I guess against Marseille, they rode their luck a little bit before winning the game, and perhaps that was their biggest test. In terms of LaLiga, they've relatively had it their own way in every game. They'd won 6 out of 6 before going into the derby against Atletico. They went 1-0 down. They came back to lead 2-1. Another Mbappe goal, his 8th in La Liga this season, and a goal for Arda Güler. It looked a little bit like that would be that this was, Real Madrid doing what they've done under Xabi Alonso so far, certainly since the Club World Cup. And then they were absolutely smashed by Atletico 5-2. What the hell happened, Rick? And where are we at with Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid?
Yeah, very interesting game, very interesting result. I think a couple of things happened. One, I don't think Xabi Alonso was expecting Atletico to play in this way. Atletico played in a way which, to be honest, me and many other people have been calling for them to do against Real Madrid for ages and ages and ages. And Simeone has more or less resisted it. He hasn't wanted to go sort of end-to-end with Real Madrid. He's tried to, in every game against Real Madrid in the last few years, they haven't had bad results, and maybe that's why he's kept doing it. But they've kind of been stable, steady, safe, not trying to test or push Madrid in a sort of dynamic way. And in this game, they went for almost all-out attack. They were relentless in attack, and Madrid just couldn't cope with it. And Atletico have the players that can do that. And it was an excellent performance by Atletico, way better than I expected them to be, because of A, how they tend to play against Real Madrid, how they set up, and B, how they've done so far this season. But yeah, it was brilliant. And I think with Real Madrid, this team, against PSG, they lost 4-0 in the Club World Cup, and then against Atletico 5-2. Against all the small teams, they seem to be pretty easy to hold them off and beat them. But against the big teams, maybe we're seeing some signs of struggle from Real Madrid, which is very interesting from a Barca perspective. Obviously, the Clasico's coming up in less than a month now, so let's see how this develops. But yeah, worrying for Real Madrid losing in these games. And they go to Kazakhstan today. They've travelled over there already, and that's not an easy away trip in terms of the distance, the time, 3-hour time gap and all that. So see how they fare when they get back.
Yeah, we'd obviously been quite sort of critical-ish of Atletico Madrid so far this season, how much of those tactics do you think were down to the fact that, I know it was only the 7th game of the season, but if they lost this game to Real Madrid, they would have been 12 points behind Real Madrid. As it is, they clawed themselves back to within 6. Do you think that gave them sort of a need to sort of perhaps take on a different... And it wasn't, I don't know if it wasn't, I guess it was a must-not-lose game, as always, but it sounds crazy to say after 7 games, but there was almost that element of like, Atletico have to win here to not save the season, but to do something big early on, because it's been doom and gloom so far.
Yeah, I think that the way every single one of the Atletico outfield players took to the pitch, you could sense that. They were going out there to win the game. It was like sheer force of will. And obviously in the past we've praised Madrid's mentality and talked about that a lot. But I don't think this Madrid team seems particularly strong mentally certainly than they used to be. Obviously they've lost almost all the players they had from the multi-Champions League winning teams. I mean, who's left? Dani Carvajal, not many beyond that. Courtois, I suppose, has been there, and Vinicius, and that's about it. So I think that, yeah, let's see how Madrid are mentally this season. I think there's been a lot of change, and Atletico went out, every single player, like rabid, and that's exactly the way you want an Atletico team to go out and play, and we haven't seen enough of that in the last couple of years.
Yeah, some of the analysis seems to be the same sort of stuff which we saw about Real Madrid last season, that they're lacking perhaps that Toni Kroos type controller in midfield. I know the misplaced pass from Fede Valverde late on has gone viral among sort of Barcelona fans on social media, saying like when you try and get Fede Valverde to control games like Pedri, etc., it's a really sort of, I know it's an isolated moment and Fede Valverde has lots of strengths, but he gave that goal away for Griezmann to make it 5-2 late on. And just about whether, I know Alonso's been sort of true to himself perhaps in terms of he's not given everything to Vinicius or Rodrigo, etc., but just in terms of how true he is being to himself and how much he's sort of perhaps pandering to personalities or people or whatnot. I don't know if Madrid would be more solid, for example, if he's obviously the opposite of Ruben Amorim in terms of he's been prepared to be more pragmatic and not play his back three and change the formation that brought him success at Leverkusen, which obviously Amorim's not doing with Manchester United. But I've seen some people suggesting that perhaps he should go back to what made him successful.
Well, I think we might see that now, but not necessarily because of that, but more because Carvajal's out for a month, Trent's out for probably around a month from now. So, I mean, they've lost 2 right-backs. Maybe you could put Fede Valverde there, he's played there before, and obviously in midfield is not having the greatest of times. I think, to be honest, on that midfield controller thing, the idea is that Arda Güler does that. Let's see whether he can, if he's good enough to. He's certainly promising. But, yeah, I think we could see Alonso change formation now, yeah?
Let's see, just under a month until the first Clásico of the season, end of October. Plenty of games before then, starting with Barcelona at home to Paris Saint-Germain on Wednesday. Another big Champions League test for Hansi Flick's side. We'll be back on Patreon with Tony to dissect that game later this week. In the meantime, stay positive.